Hi, this is Reginald Argue again. I'm still in Toronto. I'm checking out the beauty of this city here, and I ran into this Canadian artist, singer-songwriter, and I've talked to him for a lot of times on YouTube, and I'm a big fan of one of your songs you did with Another Day of Misery. And with that said, I'd like to introduce Andrew Jackson. Talk a little about that song. I mean, it's just out of this world what you showed with the graphics and the words and everything.
Well, I wrote the song, I guess, as a commentary on the current state of society, and I knew a very talented director who I gave my album to, and she fell in love with that song and basically said I need to make a video for this song, and literally, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Because I was really just looking for a photo shoot at that point. I knew her from before as a photographer, but she had gotten into the videos, and so we made the video because she offered me, such a great deal. And the two of us sort of brainstormed the concepts of the imagery, so it was both of us, but I agreed with a lot of the stuff she wanted to do, and then I added some stuff in. It was a collaboration in terms of the visuals.
Was she the one that, or was it you, that agreed to the fact that the person is strapped down to a bed, and they have that strap around their head, and then they have the thing that holds their eyes open like this? To me, I look at that as society nowadays. It's like the information's being force-fed to us, and yet we're not seeing the signs of 1984, because you kept flashing 1984 with a couple times during the video. I mean, can you talk
Well,
a little
there's
bit
one
about that?
time, in the video, I go to volunteer to get paid for some human experiments, and my ticket number is 1984, obviously deliberately chosen, and yeah, I get strapped down on the gurney there, and I'm forced to watch a bunch of flickering televisions, which is, how most people are raised today. The third line of my album, which is being released on July 26th.
That's a downloadable one. I mean, this one you have is a rare one.
That's the original disc that I had used to sort of to meet people with. But the album is being officially released July 26th. We're playing a show in Kingston, and then we're touring through Ottawa and Moncton, and it's an outskirt of Ottawa, actually. We're still lining up some other shows right now. There's supposed to be a Montreal show. We're just waiting on the confirmation of that. Perhaps Fredericton, maybe Quebec City. That's all going to be decided this week. But yeah, it's $2. It's available on Bandcamp and iTunes and all those other places. I wrote the lyrics to the album, as a reflection of, what's going on. But I'm also, I'm an artist. I'm into poetry. So it's not just straightforward. Some people have a problem that it's not straightforward enough. They want to listen to a band that's like spelling it out, like, oh, the people in the White House are corrupt. Like, they want lyrics like that, that's not what I'm about. I'm more into, the art of it, and, wordplay and poetry, and, putting it together as, a package that will hopefully inspire people to actually think, which is, thinking is a thing of,
That's what I really liked about your YouTube that you did on Another Day of Misery. As I'm watching it, I could hear the words, and I'm seeing the picture, and to me, as someone who loves to write, as someone who loves poetry, that loves to write lyrics and everything else, is that I can see how it all ties together, and I thought it was breathtaking. I mean, I'm a big fan of that, and that's why I really look forward to talking to you about this. And do you have any other YouTubes you really want people to check out, other songs that you've done that offer just as big of a message, I feel, as that song that you did?
Well, the other video that I've made so far is For Enough Blood to Keep 'Em Coming, which is on the album as well. And that video is on my YouTube, and it's a zombie video. There's just a lot of zombies in it.
So that you just, if you go to YouTube, you type in Andrew Jackson, and you'll be able to
It's Andrew Jackson 09 or Andrew Jackson Rock.
And you also have a YouTube too.
No, YouTube.
Or not YouTube, but Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook. Andrew Jackson Rock is the Facebook music page, and so there that has the YouTube clips are embedded there. Some of the songs are embedded there, so it's all, you know, it's a far-reaching network. Andrew Jackson's roots have now spread wide onto the internet.
And there was something that you and I were talking about right before we started this video, and you were talking about how you see what's happening right now. It's not really America trying to annex Canada, but it's sort of Britain using the back door to go through Canada to annex the United States.
Yeah, you have a lot of these people who are activists, and they're not that well informed, and so they'll go around saying, "Oh, we can't let the American influence, you know, ruin our Canadian way of life or our Canadianism," which, quite frankly, Canada is not its own country. I mean, it's a colony of Britain, that's a fact. They call it a constitutional monarchy, which is a fancy term for colony. And nothing gets done without the Queen's approval, as was proven last year with her proroguing the government a few times.
Yeah, Governor General right there.
The Governor General is who the Prime Minister asks permission to do anything, and the Governor General is the Queen's representative.
Yeah.
If you look at a map of Canada, I think it's 94% of it is labeled Crown land. And if you go to the dictionary or Wikipedia and you look up the definition of Crown land, it is owned by the British monarch. So the Queen of England owns it. And yet people, they see the Queen on their money and they think, oh, that's just a ceremonial figurehead. It doesn't mean anything. And then her grandson goes around doing his honeymoon tour, and they don't tell you any other news the whole time. All they say is how people are falling in love with the royals all over again, and it's, you know, there was one headline when they went to Quebec where they were met with protests. I actually read that article because it really makes me sick to my stomach to read anything about these people. But I read that one, and there was 2 lines that talked about the protests, and the rest of it was the same old, but really everywhere else they went, people were loving them and receiving them with adulation and, you know, welcoming them and telling them how great they were and showing the love for the monarchy and all this. So obviously they're going to say that because the monarchy owns all the media. So they're going to tell you how great they are in the newspaper because they own the newspaper. It's obviously, you know, if I had a newspaper, it would say Andrew Jackson's great, you know, every day.
Well,
guaranteed.
You take a look at right now. It's Bell Canada. They own CTV. They own, basically, there's a Global's owned by someone, and then it's like all the different TV stations are owned by one
umbrella,
or 2 or 3, you know, and you can trace all these different people.
There's 6 media companies in the entire planet that own everything, and they're all partnered.
Yeah, it's just so, that's what I love about YouTube, and I love about the independent media, and I love about alternative media, is that we can't let it get bought out. And right now, even in Vancouver, there's an example where a radio station I used to be involved with that I resigned from due to health reasons, and I didn't like what they were trying to do to me behind the doors, trying to force me to sign a document I didn't agree with. I found out barely a week and a half after I resigned that the 3rd biggest private corporation in Canada had gotten into financial bed with people within cooperatives. They could do a frequency exchange where they'll get a deal for $1.4 million over 5 years in around there in technical, marketing, and other things, just to change the frequency with this corporation. And they're a non-profit organization, and they'll get $120,000 a year. That's another example of how this is the last community-run radio station in Vancouver. The rest are university radio stations, college stations. But this shows how, with Vancouver, that freedom of speech is quickly being silenced. And it's just, to me, it's appalling, because I love radio, and I love alternative media, and I love the fact that we do it for the love of the people. We don't do it for money. We do it for the fact to educate the people, and that's what I love about your music, is the fact that you're an up-and-coming artist, and I hope to see a lot more of you. But at the same time, as you're there, what you've done is you've actually educated a lot of people, and just, yeah, it's very artistic.
I'm trying to get people's brains started again, because North American society in particular, is suffering from the bin syndrome, which is brain in neutral. And it doesn't matter how much you rev that engine, if it's in neutral, you're not going to go forward. So people are just being fed a bunch of nonsense, and they regurgitate it and they repeat it like parrots, but they're not thinking on their own. And even well-educated, university degree carrying people, they don't think. But the purpose of the education system in North America is to produce graduates who don't think. That's all been publicly disclosed, is that they want yes men, or people who will toe the line, not rock the boat. You're taught this information, you're taught to cram for a test and to get 94 on your test by writing the right answers that they taught you. But meanwhile, half of it is a lie. So if you knew that it was a lie, you would go in there and write the real answer and you'd fail the test. So it's not in your interest to go to university and get a degree where you fail, obviously. So you're going to go there and you're just going to do what is expected to get your degree, and by the end of it, the whole framework of thinking has changed, and these young adults have now become drones instead of thinking adults.
Well, you're seeing that in an awful lot of even environmentalists nowadays, that in the past I was pointing out how in Alaska, how there was this massive open pit copper mine going in place that would have been right near a bunch of rivers were spawning rivers, right? And their tailings from this mine were going to be piled up, and any earthquake that happened, the tailings could go right into the river and possibly poison where the salmon spawned at. So what I did was I contacted a whole bunch of environmentalists in Vancouver and elsewhere in BC and tried to tell them what happened. And to my knowledge, not one of them went up to help this organization up in Alaska. So not only is it, as you're saying, the way that they were acting,
politics.
Yeah, and it's also they developed the attitude of it's not in my backyard. But we have to look at the fact that what happens in British Columbia is going to affect the rest of Canada. What happens in Toronto is going to affect the rest of Canada. What happens in Alaska is right above British Columbia, so it's going to affect British Columbia.
Hey, there's an old expression that a butterfly can flap its wings in one part of the world, and through a chain of events and reactions, a hurricane will be formed on the other side of the planet. So what's going to happen when every day they're dumping radiation into the ocean in Fukushima?
Yeah.
Forever, because it's not going to stop.
So what actually, I was going to ask some people about that, like what if you take a look at the news, it was real big for a little while, then all of a sudden, gradually it just disappeared right off the screen.
It actually, it was a cover-up from day one, and it's sad because, I have a relative whose father-in-law is a nuclear scientist, and I talked to him personally. I said, what do you think of Fukushima? And he said that he thought the media was overplaying it. And I really didn't have much to say to him after that, because that's a talking point, like I mentioned. That's something that he read or he heard several times on TV and in a newspaper, so he just repeated that to me without thinking that, oh, the media is hyping it up, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the reality is the media has been covering it up since day one. They said there was no meltdown. The three things melted down in the first week. We were told about it a month and a half later. There was a bunch of people who were saying that all along. But the media was covering it up, saying there was no problem. Then they finally said, actually, you know what, there's 3 meltdowns. They have these explosions where they store the old spent fuel rods in some upper level above the reactor. So the thing blows up and it sends all these rods into the air, and they come raining down all over. And those things are producing massive amounts of radiation. They're dirty radiation. And and the media says, oh, there was like a hydrogen explosion, it's not a big deal. And you can see the video footage of these rods literally falling out of the sky because they were shot up 2 miles in the air because it was such a huge explosion. So, I mean, it boils down to people just don't, they've been raised to not think, to not want to think, and they've been brought up to just accept what the television tells them as reality. And because it's so ridiculous now, and it's so over the top false, that there is this mass awakening. Because someone like me, I always knew there was something off my whole life, but I couldn't understand why I had a problem or why I was anti-establishment. In high school I used to draw the anarchy symbol on my binder. I didn't know what anarchy meant, But 3 years ago, I sort of, someone told me I could look behind the curtain, and I looked behind the curtain, and I've been looking behind the curtain, and I've seen a lot. But most people just, I guess they're too afraid to look behind the curtain. But I wrote the album from a artistic perspective, which allows for me to not actually it allows me to speak in a certain framework.
Yeah.
Like a politician, like Ron Paul, for example. He's not going to say certain things, because if he does, that's the end of it for Ron Paul. They'll pull the plug on his microphone, or he'll be disappeared, or something will happen. So he has to work within a certain framework, and he can say things up to a certain point, which are giving you like 80% of the information, and if you have a brain, you can fill in the other 20%. But he can't tell you everything, because that's not allowed. It's not according to the code.
Yeah.
If you rock the boat too much, well, guess what? You're not going to be on the television, because the people who own the television
or in the radio
don't want you to rock their boat.
Yeah.
So you can sit in those person's boat who own the television, and you can say certain things. So I've said those certain things. To go beyond that is not really possible. And when I first, hit the scene with this music, because it's taken me a while to actually get to the point where I could release an album. But when I first put it out, I was very vocal about, the conspiracies, I guess some people call them, and a lot of doors ended up being slammed in my face because of that. So I had to sort of step back and say, all right, well, all the lyrics are there; they're already written. So do I have to go and make a video that matches the lyrics? Not really. I could just put pretty girls in my video, and if people watch it enough, they're going to hear the lyrics, which are the message.
Yeah.
Because there's some songs, like I had these grand visions of these elaborate videos, in concentration camps or whatever. But A, it's a budgetary thing, but B, it's not really necessary to put it that much in people's face, because my music's for people who understand what's going on, but it's also for people who don't understand what's going on. It's for people to gain new perspectives. It's for people to gain new understanding. So if people are totally clueless, they can still like the music, and eventually the lyrics would hopefully inspire them to think or to understand something that they didn't understand before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there, in closing, is there?
It's kind of like a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
It depends on what what you're going to get out of it.
Well, with your music, what I get out of it is that, I explained to you before we began the interview that, what my wife and I have been through, and, I'd like to see more people awake of what really is happening right now. That's what I'd like to see, and I feel that your song, Another Day of Misery, is a perfect example of how it's the beginning open. It's ripping the veil back, and it's allowing people to see through the curtain, and gently bring them across. Not really throw it right in their face, sort of thing. And I greatly admire you for doing that. But is there anything like a website people can go to, that you have a website or an email that people can contact you through?
Definitely, yeah. AndrewJacksonRock.com. AndrewJacksonRock.com.
And in closing, is there any message that you want to leave with the people that are just waking up right now? Because I feel that basically by 2012, most people think the world's going to end at that time. I think 2012 is going to be a massive awakening, and people are going to all of a sudden willing to stand up for what is actually ours as the people.
Well, the standing up I hope for. There's certainly 2012 is a date on the agenda.
Yeah.
That is ongoing against the people. There's clearly an agenda against humanity going on. And 2012 is one of these magic dates for these people who are perpetuating this agenda. They're carrying it out. So they need to accomplish a lot in the next year to get to what their stated goals are, which is population reduction.
Yeah.
And in order for them to get to that point, I think it's going to force people to wake up. If you start, the more obvious it is, the more people are going to wake up. So
Yeah.
the more oppression, the more cops beating up old ladies in wheelchairs, the more of that goes on, the more people wake up.
Well-
So I agree with you that there will be this mass awakening.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen until the people are really literally backed right into the corner,
Yeah.
and they're forced to wake, to see it. And even at that point, you're still going to have a great portion, probably a majority of people, who will just psychologically, go into some other place to avoid dealing with the fact that these horrors are real.
Yeah. I mean, you probably saw it. I interviewed one gentleman who was from the Hitler Youth when I was doing radio, and he was
Did
talking.
he know Pope Benedict?
Well, no, I don't. He didn't mention his name, but
Because the Pope was the Hitler Youth.
yeah, there was a gentleman, but this gentleman's name was Hitler von Campe, and excuse me, Hilmer von Campe. Hilmer was explaining, how the situation with when he was growing up, that even children were ratting on the parents and turning them in, and parents,
They're teaching that now in school.
yeah. And you're looking at it, and you're looking at society. It's just eroding at such a level.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've always been someone. If you want to know where you're going to in where you're going to in the future, look to your past.
Yeah.
Because that's
And
what
that being
happened.
said, it took Hitler 10 years to get elected and start these gas chambers. But today, what used to take 100 years happens in one day.
Yeah, because of the internet too. And
Yeah, so the internet, the organization, the shipping, the whole network of everything, how it works. You can send someone money instantly on the other side of the planet. So these things can happen. So that being said, a Hitler scenario can literally creep up overnight.
yeah,
Now it's already well underway, if you pay attention to what's happening in North America. But it's not as extreme yet, right? But to get that extreme doesn't require a lot. It could maybe be a week,
Yeah.
to do what Hitler did in 10 years.
wow.
So that's just a reality of modern, accomplishing things in the modern world. It just happens a lot faster.
Well, I mean, for writing a book like that, and talking about that scenario you're talking about, that's what got me, exiled out of Canada for almost
Yeah.
5 years of my life, and death threats, jail threats, hitting the sidewalk. Yeah, the list goes on and on. But it's just there are a few people in Canada, when you start talking about that, the next thing they'll do is they'll try to silence you. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. What happens is we're really looking forward to your up and coming album. One last thing, I just want you to quickly again push where you can get your album at, what your website is, your email, so that way the people that are listening to this YouTube can go in and enjoy your artistic work as much as I have too. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure right below this YouTube clip you'll put the link to my YouTube, which is Andrew Jackson09 or Andrew Jackson Rock on YouTube. My website is andrewjacksonrock.com. There's contact information there, or you could email info@andrewjacksonrock.com. And my album Feral Familiar is dropping on July 26th, and we're playing in Kingston, Ontario that night, and doing a tour of Eastern Canada, and I'm very excited. It's going to be available for $2 as a download online with a great booklet with all the lyrics and everything that I just wrapped up. Originally on the CD was to meet people and stuff like that, but I didn't put the lyrics in there because at the time I thought they were too racy. I guess I didn't want to burn those bridges. I wanted people to figure it out, but at this point I just said, what, time's running out.
Yeah.
People need to know what I'm saying.
Yeah, they definitely do now, because your videos, to me, that one video I watched yours, it says it all, right? So, but thank you.
And there's two versions actually of Another Day of Misery. There's an extended version,
Yeah.
which is actually 3 songs from the album: Hold On, Tragedy and Hope, and Another Day of Misery. Tragedy and Hope is an instrumental, which I named after a book that people should be aware of. And Hold On is a really lovely song. But then there's also the shorter, just single version of it. And then Enough Blood to Keep 'Em Coming is my other video that I have right now. and we're working on a special that we're going to be filming on the tour, and then I have a third video that I'm going to be filming after that. So there's more multimedia entertainment to come from Andrew Jackson.
That's quite intense. Your work is, to me, it's very intense, and it's great to see someone of coming up from the younger generation that's willing to start teaching people. I think it's really important. But thank you again for agreeing to coming on this video, and I just want to say in closing that I look forward to the next guest that we're going to talk to during our tour throughout Toronto, and now coming up to Niagara Falls in a couple of days.